Hello. I am going to discuss René Descartes. René Descartes was a French philosopher, mathematician, and scientist who spent 20 years of his life in the Dutch Republic. Many refer to Descartes as the father of modern philosophy, and most of his work is still studied even today. Although his philosophical works are mostly what he is known for, his influence in mathematics and science was also equally influential. A system that he developed is widely used for geometric shapes and equations in algebra. The system was named after him, and he was well known in the mathematical world as well. This system is called the Cartesian coordinate. Born in France on March 31st, 1596, to a father who was a counselor in the parliament, and therefore Descretas inherited a modest rank of nobility. Sadly, he lost his mother when he was only a year old. His father did remarry, and he left his son to be raised by his maternal grandmother. At the age of 10, Descartes was sent to the Jesuit college in La Flèche. There, young men were trained for careers in the military, in judiciary movements, as well as in government administration. After that, Descartes attended Poitiers and obtained a law degree in 1616. After this, Descartes moved to the Netherlands and studied mathematics and science. He worked closely with physicist Isaac Beckman, which is who Descartes wrote the Commendam of Music, which is his first surviving work. While traveling in and around Europe, Descartes explains that he studied the Book of the World. It was during his travels he invented the analytical geometry, which, as I had mentioned before, is used to solve and help with geometric and algebra problems. It was also here that he began to write and resource discourse of method and rules for the direction of the mind. Descartes had 4 basic rules: accept nothing as true that is not self-evident, divide problems into the simplest forms and parts, solve problems by proceeding from simple to complex, and recheck the reasoning. Descartes insists that all key notions and limits of each problem must be clearly defined. Sadly, Descartes lived a life of seclusion for many years, most of which were in the Netherlands. It was here he practiced medicine for free and tried to help society improve itself. In 1630, he wrote the first draft of Meditations, and it was during this process of writing that Descartes matriculated at the University of Leiden. Around this time, Descartes began a controversy with the Calvinist theologian Descretas that continued for the rest of Descartes' life. Descartes' letter of Vitius in 1648 was a plea for religious tolerance and the right of man. Descartes argued that Christian, Muslims, and even atheists pray for the same thing, and that is to ultimately end up in heaven, and therefore they are praying to the same God, and therefore should be treated equally and rightfully. In 1635, Descartes had a daughter named Francine, with a woman named Helena Janes. Sadly, at the age of 5, his daughter passed away from scarlet fever. Descretas describes this as the greatest sorrow in his entire life. While awaiting the publication of the World in 1633, Descartes chose to wait to release this work, as Galilee's works were being condemned for stating that the earth revolved around the sun. This was happening in Rome, and Descartes was hopeful that this would change and that his work would be released and someday taught in the Catholic schools. At the time, what was being taught in the Catholic schools was only what was based on religion, and Descartes thought that that needed to change and that there needed to be more of scientific and mathematical information included in those teachings. Discourse on Method is one of the first modern philosophical works written in French. Descartes did this to allow for all to be able to read it. Most works were printed in Latin. Therefore, only the educated people of that time were able to read that works that were printed in Latin. Women were not educated in Latin at that time, and Descartes thought it was very important that women were able to read his works. Therefore, that is why he chose to print it in French. He believed that everyone could tell true from false by the natural light of reason. Within the writings of discourse, he gave us a moral code for seeking the truth. Obey local customs and laws. Make decisions on the best evidence available. That change occurs. And always seek the truth. Perhaps one of his greatest quotes was, "I think, therefore I am." A human being is a union of mind and body, as noted in his works. We are conditioned by experience to have specific emotional responses, was one of his founding philosophies, that we as people experience certain things, and from those experiences, we develop responses to that. Descretas passed away in Sweden on February 11th, 1650, from pneumonia. Many people had questioned and asked what his last dying words were, but it was confirmed that he was actually in a coma and therefore had no final words. But perhaps what we could take from him and from his philosophical writings and teachings is that we must seek the knowledge to know what is true and right for us. We must remain aware of what is happening and changing around us to develop as people and as a society. If we stay in the same place and don't develop, we are only limiting ourselves. We are not growing and changing, and we are not following our true path. There is a path for everyone, and that is what we need to seek. And truthfully, I believe that is what Descretas was trying to say to all of us in his teachings. Thank you.